I guess I'll just thank you, people. Welcome. Why don't I just start with a brief introduction of who I am? I'm Stephen Klein. I'm founder and CEO of Curiouser.ai, my pride and joy. I also teach at UC Berkeley. I teach AI ethics, entrepreneurship, and marketing. I'm a member of the Harvard Business School Leadership Council in the Bay Area, where I help manage teams of consulting groups, and we work pro bono with nonprofits across the United States. And I'm in the process of writing a book with Georgetown University, Georgetown Publishing, on the topic of what life will be like in a post-automation world. And that's a topic for another discussion, I suppose, but I'm very optimistic, quite frankly, very optimistic about the future. Prior to this, I ran innovation and marketing for the largest law firm in the world from 2015 to 2021. And one of the key responsibilities I had was in the realm of AI ethics, and I was fortunate enough to travel around the world and to speak to lawyers, general counsel, chief legal officers, all over the world on the topic of AI ethics, data bias, liability. And prior to that, from 2008 to 2015, I founded another company called Loyal3, a company that was dedicated to democratizing the capital markets. So we were the first ever to be able to distribute stock and IPO stock directly from a company to an individual at the same price and time as Wall Street. So that's a little bit about me and who I am. Why I am is that I really do believe in entrepreneurship. I do believe in artificial intelligence. I do believe there's a spiritual component to everything that it is we all do, whether we recognize it or not. And I'm going to assume that the people here are builders, possibly misfits. I won't go that far. I'm a misfit and dreamers. So today, the topic is that the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. That's really quite a paradox. If playing it safe is dangerous, that's kind of bizarre. But in reality, I do think, and I think you'll agree, I hope you'll agree by the time this hour is up, that this statement is true. So the one goal we have in the next hour is to not play it safe and to try and see if each of us can look at life, work from a different perspective, ask ourselves some questions we might not normally ask ourselves, maybe even make some changes. On a personal note, one of the fears I have is that I've always kind of wanted to potentially live in an RV and never quite did for, I think, various reasons. And I think I'm going to do that. So this is a 1997 Catalina Coachman. Pretty, right? So I'm taking my own medicine. Okay, that's what I'm, I guess, trying to tell you, is that I'm always trying to do the things that I might be slightly afraid to do. So we all have our demons. They're there. And I think we can recognize them or we don't recognize them, but they're in us. That's the voice telling us what we can't do, telling us, we're not good enough, telling us now is not the time, whatever that is. But the reality is, and I know this is hard to believe, but this is truth. The reality is that those demons they're false gods. They're paper tigers. They're just bullies. If you ever decide to look it in the eye, it'll run. They've got no strength. the only way they can kind of basically affect you is by bullying you and getting you to look the other way. So the question is, why are so many of us afraid to simply be ourselves, right? Rather than being something that, you know, I guess we were told we ought to be, or we think we ought to be, or something that's more impressive than we might be, or whatever that is. Oscar Wilde said something that is one of my favorite quotes in the world: be yourself, because everyone else is taken. And I mean, that's true. If you were truly yourself, you would differentiate yourself from everyone else, and that would be your superpower, right? Because differentiation is the opposite of average, right? The more differentiated you are, the less average you are, the more above average you are. And I think it's really interesting that when we meet somebody new, you know, they always ask, so what do you do? Which is another way of saying, so who are you? And we always answer it the same way, or we pretty much always answer it the same way, right? You know, we always say, you know, oh, I'm Steven, and you know, I'm CEO of a company, and yeah, you know, that's who I am. But that's not who I am. And I don't think that's the question that really matters. The question is, why are you doing what you're doing? And I mean, really think about that. Don't just gloss it over. You know, why do you do what you do? Is it because you're stuck doing it? Is it because you love doing it? Is it because you don't know what else to do? But purpose lives in the why. And we live our lives in the what's, the hows, the where's, and the when's. But we very, very rarely spend time on the why, probably because it is so damn difficult to think about. We do truly start out as geniuses. Everyone on this call has genius in them. And this myth that genius is this extremely rare lightning in a bottle phenomenon that only happens to, you know, 12 people every 100 years because they're the ones with the high IQ. It's just a myth. All kids are born geniuses. And it's based on their inherent curiosity and their fearlessness. Kids are fearless. They do not care how stupid their question is. They don't care. And when you answer their question, that isn't the answer. They're going to ask it again and again and again because instinctively they know that the truth lies deeper in the realm of first principles. So we all do start out as geniuses. A lot of words on this slide, but NASA did a study in 1968, and they tested 1,600 children. It was done in cooperation with George Land, who founded Polaroid Corporation. Israel also administered 280,000 adults. What they did essentially was they basically gave these kids a creative genius test. And they were, sorry. And what they found was that, look at this, 98% of 5-year-olds tested positive for creative genius. And it was a longitudinal test, so they kind of followed them through time. And I guess we're not getting smarter as we get older. Crazy, right? 30% by the time you're 10, 12 to 13% by the time you're 15. You and me, we somewhere along the way, we lost it. And so the question really is, you know, what happened, right? Where did it go? I think a lot of us know where it went. But I would argue we didn't actually lose it. We buried it under a pile of crap, and we buried it under a pile of fear, and we buried it under a pile of conformity. So what happened? Here's a clue.
Without intending it, by appealing to rules and incentives, we are engaging in a war on wisdom. Let me just give you a few examples. First, of rules and the war on moral skill. The lemonade story is one. Second, no doubt more familiar to you, is the nature of modern American education. Scripted, lockstep curricula. Here's an example from Chicago kindergarten. Reading and enjoying literature and words that begin with B, the bath. Assemble students on a rug. Give students a warning about the dangers of hot water. Say 75 items in this script to teach a 25-page picture book all over Chicago in every kindergarten class in the city. Every teacher is saying the same words in the same way on the same day. We know why these scripts are there. We don't trust the judgment of teachers enough to let them loose on their own. Scripts like these are insurance policies against disaster. And they prevent disaster. But what they assure in its place is mediocrity.
Mediocrity. So our lives are pretty much constrained and scripted. And all of the studies basically establish the fact that all of our biggest regrets will be playing it safe. And that's why it's dangerous. 1995 Psychological Review. Over the short term, and this is where it gets really interesting, over the short term, we think more in terms of actions and regretting actions. That's just the way the human mind works. I'm not smart enough to know why, but that's how it works. But longer term, we overwhelmingly regret inactions, missed chances, unlived dreams. Warren Buffett, I'm a fan of his old school, old-fashioned values. And when you ask him what the biggest mistakes were that he ever made, or what the biggest regrets are that he ever had, it's always the same answer, which is that he regrets lots and lots of things he didn't do, chances he didn't take, investments he missed. It's not the mistakes he made by doing things. Doing things and making mistakes is great. If you do things and make mistakes, you're going to learn. You're going to pivot. You're going to keep going. You're going to get better. So doing things and making mistakes is not a problem. It's not doing things. Daniel Pink. He's a brilliant, brilliant professor. And if you haven't read some of what he's written or some of his books, you're missing out. But he did an extensive study, and over and over. And this is universal, okay? This isn't like New Jersey or Silicon Valley or America. This is human. 16,000 people, 105 countries. People expressed regret about not taking the chance. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, which is synonymous with purpose, arises from courage, not comfort. And regret stems from failing to live with purpose or authenticity. And I think it's interesting to think about that purpose and authenticity and courage and discomfort all live in the same area. And you see it on LinkedIn, right? If you look for it, it's like it's in our faces. You basically just see so many people including mega influencers. I mean, people with like hundreds of thousands of followers. There's some people with more than 1 million followers. And you look at what they're doing, and not all of them, and I don't mean to be critical of all of them, and I don't mean to sound like that, but it's important, I think, to notice that so much of it is just safe cliches, like stuff that you'd put on a bumper sticker, right? It's stuff that'll never get anybody in trouble. It's stuff designed to get people to agree with you, get people to like you, to be popular, as if we're all running for some kind of, running a campaign to get elected. And it's all very comfortable. And I think it's symptomatic of a lot of what we're seeing here. So now, playing it safe's never one decision, right? It's not like you got an on-off switch. Safe. Uh-oh, I'm in danger mode. It's more insidious than that. It happens in increments, so that you may not even be noticing it, but it's gradual. This line really gives me a chill, because, I don't know whether people fail as much as they slowly just disappear and fade, become irrelevant. And I think there's a lot of people struggling with this right now, because there's a lot of there's just a lot of stuff going on. And, the world is challenging, and it really is. The job market is challenging, and it really is. And I think that makes people want to play it safer. And I think that it gets more and more dangerous. And we become more and more irrelevant. Playing it safe is learned behavior. You were not born playing it safe. When I was, 4 or 5 years old, I literally thought I was Superman. I am not kidding you. And the proof that I had that I was Superman was that my first name began with an S, and so did his. I didn't need any more fucking proof than that. That was way, way too much to be than a coincidence. Come on. So I actually put a towel around my neck, like a cape, pretending I could fly. I jumped off a roof. Broke my leg. Stupid. But you know what? At least I wasn't playing it safe. It's an illusion. It's not a reality. Postponing your life is always a terrible, terrible option. And that's what we do. I don't think we say, you just don't have the courage to make that decision. You know what? You just don't have the courage. You don't have what it takes. We don't say that. We say, now's not the time. Or I've got too much responsibility. Or I need to learn a few things first. Or blah, 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 blah. We just kick the can down the road. Then the road ends. There's this concept called opportunity cost. Forgive me if people on the call know what that is, but even if there's one or two that don't, it's important to understand that opportunity cost is a real cost. Okay, there's financial implications to opportunity cost. It's also very much an emotional cost, but it's the biggest cost that affects our lives that we don't actually factor into decisions that we make, because either we're ignorant, we don't understand it, we just don't want to think about it. But the simplest way to think about it, and the way I often think about it, is if somebody comes to me, I love mentoring people. I mentor lots and lots of people, and if somebody comes to me and they say, maybe they just graduated from college, and they say, I'm thinking about going to grad school. I'm not sure, should I quit my job and go to grad school or not? What advice do you have for me? And one of the questions I'll ask is, well, what do you think it's going to cost you? And they'll say, well, I think, most of the schools will average about, say, $50,000 a year. And so for 2 years, that's $100,000. So it'll cost me $100,000. And they think that's the cost. But it's not. Because then I ask, well, aren't you working now? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, so what are you making now? And I'm making these numbers up, but they'll say, $100,000 a year. Let's say $50,000 a year. I'm making $50,000 a year. So I say, if you're making $50,000 a year and you quit 2 years, that's $100,000. On top of the $100,000 you said it cost you, that's $200,000. Okay, so you're off by half. So this decision is going to cost you $200,000, not $100,000. Now that may not be the decisive factor, but it's a material issue that ought to be considered. And you can do that with lots and lots of decisions. So opportunity cost is literally, what are the infinite number of things you are not doing while you're doing the thing you're doing? You got to think about that. So comfort often is, I think, the most expensive trade-off. Almost always. Strategic boldness. So decision-making, and we could just do a whole hour on decision-making, and there's so many ways to think about the analysis and the science and the game theory behind it. We don't have time to go through all of that. But one of the most basic ways we make decisions, or we're taught to make decisions, especially in business school, is through something called expected monetary value, EMV, decision tree analysis. But it's basically Yogi Berra's quote that when I come to a fork in the road, take it. So we tend to think about decisions as we're coming up to a fork in the road. I can go left, I can go right. And one of the fundamental ways that you make those decisions in a quantitative and objective and analytical manner is that you would attach a monetary value to each of the decisions. So if I go left and take this job, it will pay me $100,000 a year. So in 5 years, that's what, maybe 500,000. I'm simplify it. But if I go to the right, it's a startup, and they're only going to pay me $20,000 a year. But there's a 20% probability I'll make $5 million in 5 years. So 20% of 5 million is $1 million. So theoretically, based on that analysis, the decision to go with the startup at a 20% probability of achieving a $5 million outcome is the way to go. And then you do sensitivity analysis, right? You run okay, but okay, those are the numbers. Now let me apply some qualitative factors to that. For example, where would I be happier? What job would I enjoy more? Where would I learn more? Right? And that's how we tend to make decisions. We tend to avoid the decisions that are the scariest. But I believe, and again, maybe it's theory and not grounded in scientific fact, but I agree, if you steer toward the fear, you're actually steering toward the value. Jeff Bezos, love him or hate him, I study him. There's about 15 entrepreneurs I study. He's one of them. And he developed a couple of ways of thinking about the world that I think is really, really interesting. And one of them is what he calls the regret minimization framework. And the regret minimization framework is also borrowed from a German philosopher whose name is Schopenhauer, who created something called Schopenhauer's telescope. But they're essentially the same thing, which is that you time travel into the future and then you look back on your life. So instead of saying, what decision, what should I do, this or that, moving from the present into the future and coming to that fork in the road, you catapult yourself into the future and you look back and you say, what decision would I regret the least? And you would be amazed at how that thought process often leads to a very different outcome. And it usually leads to the riskiest one. It almost always correlates to the riskiest one because that's what we regret, right? It's like, I could have done it. I should have done it. And I'll never know. The biggest regret's not trying. I'm going to throw something else in here that I believe to be true that a lot of people probably just ignore me when I say this. But, I don't think there is such a thing as failure. Honestly, I don't. I honestly do not believe there is such a thing as failure. I think failure is taking a movie. Failure is taking a book and turning it into chapters. So you might really fuck it up in chapter 2 and be dead in chapter 3. But chapter 4, you come back. In chapter 5, you start thriving. In chapter 6, you take over the world. So if you look at it through the whole picture, and your life is a story, and your life is a film, or as a movie, say, from the time you're born to the time you die, there is no such thing as failure. There are just setbacks and then success that manifests itself through hard work and not quitting in surprising ways. Curiouser.ai, my baby, terrifying to start it, isn't what it was 3 years ago. I failed a bunch of times. At one point, my board of directors, basically, they didn't leave me for dead because they were my friends. I've known them for years. But it was kind of like, hey, good try. But you just keep going and things happen. Great things happen. You meet new people. They join your team. It just turns into something beautiful as long as you do not quit. Rejection. I'm actually at the point where I enjoy it. I have been rejected so many freaking times that it's almost like, okay, you self-select as a moron if you rejected me. Next. Literally, I don't take it personally. And none of these people did either. I love this stuff. Study this. J.K. Rowling rejected 12 times. That's a stupid story. Harry Potter. Jobs got fired. He almost got fired 3 times. He got fired once, maybe twice. Einstein. God, I'd love to be there I'd love to be able to go back into time and find out who those teachers were. Oprah Winfrey, Walt Disney, Stephen King, who created the horrible It clown, Pennywise, that I showed on the second slide, which terrifies me still. Pennywise is really scary. He tells a story of how he literally wallpapered his entire kitchen with rejection letters from publishers. So what's the point here? Is rejection failure? And I don't really know whether safe is really being safe. I think you ought to probably look at it more as like being stuck. Any of you read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance? It's a reasonably good philosophy book. It's not the best. But one of the concepts it covers philosophically is the concept of stuckness. You know, you're on your bike, your motorcycle, your son's on the back. The bike dies. It's pouring rain. You got your wrench and you strip the bolt and you're stuck in the pouring rain. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. The bolt is stripped. You're never going to get it off. You're stuck. Systems reward compliance, not growth. I think you probably all know that. When you work for a large company, I didn't do well. I mean, I was okay in large companies when I was younger. I could play the game. And I became a CMO of a Fortune 500 company. I did good. I did okay. But I always felt like I was being buried alive. Because it really is about compliance. It really is about getting along. It really is about figuring out what the guy that makes more money than you wants you to say or believe. You don't want to challenge too many people because then you're just, you're not a team player. So real safety is alignment with your calling. This woman is one of my heroes. Just listen to this. I'm hammering home the point, people, because I don't ever want you to forget it.
We are really good at putting ourselves into the shoes of us a day from now or a week from now. If we try something and it fails, oh, I'll look like an idiot, I'll feel rejected, how will this make me feel? What we're not so good of is putting ourselves in the shoes of us 1, 5, and 10 years from now and asking ourselves, how will we feel if we don't be bold and take the risk? And at the end of life, most people regret far more the risks that they didn't take, the conversations they didn't have, the chances and opportunities they got that were requiring them to well and truly get out of their comfort zone, and that they played too safe and risked too little.
Well, technical issue. Okay. Spiritual strategy. People don't recognize it, but strategy always follows imagination. Every idea in the history of the world, every innovation started in the imagination of one individual. Okay? So if you want to think about entrepreneurship in its most essential way, you can think about it as the foundation for every idea that was ever created or imagined. Okay? Every idea, no exception, 0 ideas. So far, GPT is not doing it. And trust me, I love AI and we're an AI company. But all of innovation comes out of the minds of a man or a woman. And it's an inner vision. And you see it before anyone else does. And it either just sits there or, it dies a slow death as an idea in your mind, or it starts burning a little bit and you start putting a narrative sort of structure around it so that you can start thinking about it in a rational way. And then you turn it into a story. It's all stories. And if you get the story right and you learn how to craft a story, and that is a skill unto itself, the story basically gains momentum and it's contagious, and it takes that idea out of your mind and puts it into other people's minds. And that idea then leaves your imagination, transforms into a story. The story is then transfused into the world, then that story can attract capital, and that story can attract people. And that capital combines with those people, and you turn it into an organization, a business, a startup. And then that business has one purpose, that organization has one purpose, to produce something, product or service, that's still a manifestation of that initial idea, although it will pivot. And then it goes out into the world. And then it becomes Apple or Microsoft. Or it becomes a restaurant or a dry cleaner or a landscaping business. It becomes something that started out as nothing. This is a bit philosophical, but we all have, our mind, we all have our heart. And I think the way I look at it is everyone here has a pretty sharp mind. And there's a lot of knowledge in our minds. And we've learned how to think in a lot of different ways. But the mind is basically a brake pedal in the car. And I think the heart is really the accelerator. And the heart really senses what direction you want to go in. And that, I think, is because 99% of the time humans have been on planet Earth, it's been the Stone Age. The agriculture, the industrial revolution, the internet was all like just fractions of just the very, very, very tail end of the time we've been here. So the vast amount of what constitutes humanity is intuition and pre-language thought. And I think that's kind of heart. So the truth can feel irrational, but it's intuitive because it was developed and evolved before we had language to explain it. But you can know it's real if you listen. You got to start before you're ready. Maybe that's the scariest thing of all. In our startup, it's always like we always need to make decisions as a team, right? And it's so easy to say, well, you know what? Let's make that decision next week because we'll know more by then. We'll know more by then. We'll have more data. But you never know enough. Better to do it now, screw it up, learn from it, dust yourself off, do it again, screw it up, dust yourself off. Confidence follows motion, it's action. Readiness is an illusion. You're never ready. Ever, 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 ever. One of my favorite expressions is building the plane while you fly it. I think that's what every founder has to do. And think about, okay, and building isn't just building companies. I mean, building is building lives, building families, building relationships. Everything we do is kind of building. And we're always over our skis, right? We never know enough. I think, the future really is, if you look around at all of the people that have theoretically achieved things, and I don't mean necessarily making $1 billion, but philosophers, writers, artists, they always took chances. They were all bold in their way. They were probably all told not to do it. They were probably all told that it's stupid to do it because it was unreasonable. master of destiny, victim of circumstance. There are a lot of victims right now, and I get into trouble for saying this, but I'm kind of older, and I don't remember so much victimization as I do now. But a lot of people feel like they're kind of stuck. Things are happening to them. They're powerless and they're just victims. And they spend their time kind of just struggling on the margin to survive because they've got no agency to impact change, whatever. I don't buy that. I really, really don't. I do not buy that. I think whether we want to perceive ourselves as a master of destiny or a victim of circumstances, up to us. If you want to be a victim, fine. It's voluntary. It's voluntary. You raise your hand. You got chosen. So you're the writer of your life. It's a series of accumulated decisions. You're a work in progress. Small bets, big shifts. I first read this when I was studying Eastern thought, and I studied Confucius. There's a course that's taught in undergraduate at Harvard. They've turned it into videos, and there's a book called The Path. Good book. And it's about Eastern thought, and they teach it undergrad Harvard. I think it's the second most popular course in the history of Harvard, which is kind of nuts, right? You'd think kids go to Harvard, and the first is economics, I think, but this is the second one. And then they teach Confucius. And the thing that I took away from that is that it really does the big, massive changes in our lives always start with really small changes. Nobody gets up one day and says, this is it. I'm making a big, bold move. It doesn't work that way. Only in comic books. But you can make decisions to make a lot of small changes. You can. You can get up earlier. Take a walk a mile longer. Read an extra book. Reach out to somebody that you've never reached out to and ask if you can talk to them. Just all kinds of small things we can do, if you really think about it, that will make big changes. And they really, really do add up to unbelievable changes in our lives. And there's a science behind it. So a lot of what I'm talking about is spiritual and philosophical. But I mean, I am a Harvard MBA and I am grounded. And I am, in a sense, a scientist and driven by data. And the data supports a lot of this, virtually all of this. This is where data marries philosophy. Courage takes practice. If any of you have not seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, you got to see it. 20 minutes. Amy Cuddy, Cuddy. She's a professor at Harvard, behavioral scientist. It's like the number 2 most popular TED Talk of all time, I think. But see it, because basically it's about faking it till you make it. It's about imposter syndrome. It's about the power of body language. It's really, really, but the point I'm making here is that courage basically takes practice. Have a little courage. Do it again, do it again, do it again, do it over and over again. Because you're always going to be scared. I mean, if you're human, you're always going to be scared because you've got the survival instinct in you, right? So you can kind of do a decision audit. You know, what bold move have you been delaying? Is there anything inside any of you, personally or professionally, that you're ignoring? What identity are you reinforcing? With delay or without delay? In the science fiction genre, there's these things called shapeshifters. I love shapeshifters. They're chameleons. They can turn themselves into all kinds of things. We are shapeshifters. We tend to walk into situations, whether it's a post on LinkedIn or walking into a meeting or showing up on a date. We tend to, without knowing it, try and anticipate what the other person we think they want us to be, so we can then sort of become that thing, anticipating what we think they think, so that we can increase the probability of getting what we want. And then we do that authentically. Right? And all of that's authentic. As always, I'm running out of time. So what truth keeps visiting you in silence when it's quiet? Where could you start? Business plans are important for one reason. It serves as a forcing function to help you think clearly, but it is useless as a document to predict your future. And even when you put it in front of investors, they know it's 90% fiction. They know. No one believes a single number in your business plan, trust me. But it is an example of how you think. It's showing someone how you think. And I think that's what people are looking. So show yourself how you think. So sitting down and writing a plan is important for your own purposes. So your life is a story when you think about it. You can get up tomorrow and do anything you want. You really can. You can do anything you want after this call. You can walk out on anybody. You can say anything you want. You really can. So 25 years ago, when I was 2 years old, I had the privilege of sitting down with Steve Jobs. Apple was considering an investment in a company. I was interim CEO. And I spent 20 minutes with Steve Jobs. And then at the end of the meeting, and they didn't invest, by the way. But in the meeting, I asked him, what is the, advice? It's a cliche question, but I wanted to know. He was my hero then. He's always been my hero since 1984 when he ran in 1984. When I saw him run that 1984 60-second commercial on the Super Bowl, I knew that guy had something no one else has, called courage. But I asked him what would be the advice he'd give me, or anyone who really wanted to make a difference and try and get something done between now and the time they're gone. And he just said, Stephen, the fact is, just ideas are not born. They are forced into creation, kicking and screaming against their will. So all of this snake oil that people are selling on LinkedIn, like, take my workshop and you won't be obsolete, or, hey, did you hear the story of this guy who knew how to use AI better than you and vibe coded his way to being a unicorn in 2.5 weeks? Get going, come to my workshop. And all of that shit, it's just snake oil. Snake oil has been around a long time. People have been making money selling lies from the beginning, and it will never change. And there are some seriously wealthy, successful people right now selling narratives that are pure science fiction. It takes hard work to be successful. Entrepreneurs matter. When we started this company, we could have gone in two directions. One was going B2B and really taking the AI automation route, which is what everyone else is. 99% of the industry right now is building the AI that can be sold into companies as an automation tool to theoretically optimize tasks, streamline process, and get rid of people to take out costs. That's the ROI, 99%. But we decided to build an AI to go the other way, which is augmentation and elevation. And this isn't a commercial. And we decided to kind of point towards small business and entrepreneurs, which people don't want to invest in. People want to invest in companies that are selling to big companies because it's easier to sell 100 things to one company than one thing to 100 companies, right? From a distribution and investment perspective, economies of scale perspective. Okay, so from a business model perspective, what we're doing is stupid. But there are 40 million entrepreneurs in the United States of America. Roughly the same amount of small businesses. So roughly 60 million. 20% of all Americans plan to start a business in the coming year. 99.9% of all employment comes from small to medium-sized businesses, and 67, that's a typo, 62.7% of all new jobs are created by entrepreneurs. And 90% of startups fail. And they all fail because there's different reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is they fail because the people doing it can't possibly succeed because they don't have the knowledge or the expertise or the capital for the resources. Like when you're a larger company and you need help on PR, you get a PR person. Or if you need help on product, you hire a chief product officer. But when you're small, you can't do that. You're a single cell organism. So we thought, we can build an AI. If we can build an AI that can augment entrepreneurs and be that founder and be that resource, and we can take that 90% failure and diminish it to 89, or let's flip it to 10% success rate to 11 points to 12 points. For every 1% increase, we're creating a lot of jobs. And job creation is really the key right now. So if you're thinking, the only way we're going to create jobs for kids is by creating businesses and companies for kids. And I'm telling you, that's not going to come out of the big companies. The big companies do not create jobs. They buy companies that have created jobs. They buy innovation, but they don't create it. Questions? Are there any questions?
Yes, we do have some. How do you want to do this, Stephen? Do you want to, I could read off some of the questions that we have, or if people want to come on and ask their question, that works too.
I don't. Why don't you read them just in case there are people on the call that for whatever reasons don't want to come on, but they've got a question.
Okay.
Let's protect their interests.
Okay, so the first, it's not even a question, but a statement from Eric. This is related to when we were talking about how most children are creative geniuses, and then it switches and only 2% of adults are. It would be interesting to know whether or not that can be relearned.
It can be relearned. It absolutely can be, because yes is the answer. Because being brilliant and being a genius is about being fearless and not being afraid to ask questions. Because the only thing worse than the wrong answer, the only thing worse than the wrong answer to the right question. No, I'm screwing that up. The bottom line is that it's asking questions, and more importantly, it's about thinking critically. And thinking is a learned craft. Socratic methods, Toyota's 5 Whys. If you learn to think critically, let's say the CEO of Salesforce comes out. No, let's say that the CEO of Anthropic comes out and says there's going to be a bloodbath in the future because of AI, and the internet lights up. Bloodbath, bloodbath. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You may not be a genius, but you can just stop and say, wait a minute. Why is he saying that? Benefits his business. Because the more fear he can create, the more product he'll sell, the more consulting he'll sell, the bolder his ecosystem, the more increases his valuation. He can raise more capital at a higher valuation. It gets him in the news. It gets him on CNN. Bloodbath, good word. It was on CNN. If he said, you know, we're not sure what the future holds. It may augment and create more jobs. There may be a shift. We just don't know. And I'm not an economist or a genius, and I can't predict the future. I'm just an engineer who's building a company and raised some capital. That wouldn't be on CNN. So all of us can ask questions. If the CEO of Salesforce says half of his productivity is coming from AI, or the CEO of Microsoft says, you know, it's the same. They're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We're cutting thousands of people because of AI. You know, if you look at it, it's just their regular layoffs. It's a cycle. So my question is, my answer is yes, you can be a genius and you can be brilliant by asking questions, by thinking for yourself, by challenging the status quo, and by asking why over and over again. That's the answer to my question. We're out of time.
I think we should stay on for people who want to, because there
I
are
wouldn't mind.
many questions just popped up in the chat box in the last 2 minutes. So how about, you know, for those who need to leave, we're going to send you a recording within a week or even sooner than that, so you won't miss out on the Q&A. But let's just stay on for everybody else who can and go about like 10 minutes longer. And
I agree with that, but I just want to play one really short video before people leave, because I wanted to leave you all with one single thought. I'm going to play one short video. Hopefully you can hang on for the next 3 or 4 minutes. And then if you need to go, great. And we can just spend time talking, asking questions. That's next week.
We started working about 8 weeks ago. And the question we asked was, our customers want to know who is Apple and what is it that we stand for? Where do we fit in
early 90s?
And
he just got hired back by Apple after getting fired.
About isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe. And we've had the opportunity to work with people like that. We've had an opportunity to work with people like you, with software developers, with customers who have done it in some big and some small ways. And we believe that in this world, people can change it for the better. And that those people that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do.
This is where he actually says it for the first time.
What we're going to do in our first brand marketing campaign in several years is to get back to that core value. A lot of things have changed. The market's a totally different place than it was a decade ago. And Apple's totally different, and Apple's place in it is totally different. And believe me, the products and the distribution strategy and the manufacturing are totally different, and we understand that. But values and core values, those things shouldn't change. The things that Apple believed in at its core are the same things that Apple really stands for today. And so we wanted to find a way to communicate this. And what we have is something that I am very moved by. It honors those people who have changed the world. Some of them are living, some of them are not. But the ones that aren't, as you'll see, you know that if they'd ever used a computer, it would have been a Mac. And the theme of the campaign is Think Different.
This
It's
is
the
where he
people
introduces
honoring
Think Different for the
people who
first time
Think Different and who move this world forward.
in the world.
And it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this company. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it, and I hope that you feel the same way about it I do.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So don't ever let anybody tell you you can't do something. Ever. All right.
Amazing.
Questions? And that was just for those of you, I don't know if people are still on or not, but he had been fired from Apple because the geniuses on the board of directors, the same board of directors that told him they'd fire him if he ran the 1984 commercial because it didn't have a computer in it. But this time he got fired. And they put in consumer CEOs from Pepsi and stuff, thinking Apple's a consumer company, not a computer company. And Apple just collapsed. Microsoft bailed them out. Many of you might not remember it. They were gone. Apple was bankrupt. Microsoft, their enemy, mortal enemy, Bill Gates and Jobs, invested in him to save him. Jobs came back. First thing he did is get back to the brand, get back to the soul, get back to the values. The night he finished that commercial at Chiat Day, all night, that he was up until, he says 3, 4 in the morning. He was excited, so he goes to Stanford, to the M Business School. And this is him showing it for the first time to a Stanford class. That's what that was. Anyways, that's what you just saw. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, we do have a couple more questions that came in. So this one's from Bridget. Can you say a little more about how Curiouser.ai will support entrepreneurs?
Yeah, we have essentially a bot like GPT or Claude or Mr. all the others, Grok. And her name is Alice. Because we believe girls are smarter than boys. I think everyone knows that. So girl AIs are smarter than boy AIs, but the world will find that out soon. And she's been designed to basically support thinking and to support entrepreneurs by being the opposite, thinking differently. So what she does is she shows up and she starts asking questions. Okay. Think of her as sort of Socrates meets the Mad Hatter. So she understands Socratic methods. She asks questions. She challenges you and she slows you down, okay? The whole world is saying go faster and faster and faster right now. We're saying no. Slow down and think. And so what she does is she forces you through the questioning process to reflect and to think more deeply. And then she advises you over time. And so she is essentially a co-founder, human-like partner that doesn't just show up and get your coffee, yes you to death, tell you you're a genius, and kiss your ass. She challenges you and asks you questions. And the answers often lie within all of us. So she's essentially a coach, but she also is being educated and trained as we speak through various technologies to understand entrepreneurship, to understand that innovation supply chain, dream to story, to resource, attraction, capital, people, organization, product, scale, impact, and how to guide entrepreneurs from process to process. So essentially, if we're able to pull it off, she would be the equivalent of hiring, McKinsey, an ad agency for 15 or 20,000 average a month, McKinsey 50,000 average a month for $15 a month. And that's how I think we can basically increase the probability of entrepreneurial success. The challenge is distribution, because it's very expensive to get the word out to entrepreneurs because it's such a disparate market. So the irony here is we believe we have the product that can save the world, honestly, but by creating jobs. But we don't have the, but eventually it's just going to take a lot of capital and distribution might and word of mouth to spread that word and put it in more people's hands. And we have to improve the product, quite frankly. It's not nearly what it will be. There's still some rubber bands, gerbils in the back on wheels, and some bubble gum holding her together. But she's still pretty cool. So that's how we would do it, how we're doing it.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how people can start using Alice?
Yeah, you just come to our website and you can try a trial period. It's $5 for a 2-week trial. We're charging $5. We kind of break even on that cost, because when you're in our line of work, we don't have our own foundational model, so we have to build on other large language models. So we bundle other models together, and that means there's variable cost, there's token cost for us. So the more you use it, the more we pay. So the $5 covers our costs, so we kind of break even. We don't have the capital, we're bootstrapped to just give it away. Besides, that's just not how businesses operate in the real world. I don't know when that happened. Trust me, if somebody's giving you something for free, you're not getting anything for free. But so we charge $5 for 2 weeks, and then you either, that's it, you don't like it, you like it, and then it's $25 a month, which gives us a bit of a margin, depending on the number of usage, so we can make money and be profitable. So that's the deal. So she's available, Curiouser.ai, try her. She's a beta. Go easy on her. She's like a 5, 6, 7-year-old. Alice was only 7 years old in 1864. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, this next question is from Carolina. Can you please expand on how the symptoms of cliches are dwarfing our power of education and disrupting innovation?
I don't know if it's specifically cliches that are disrupting education as much as having a real impact on social media. Let's start there on LinkedIn. If you think about a lot of the things people are saying and spreading around, it is virtually cliches. It's things they've heard before. It's things they've seen before. That's kind of what cliches are, kind of obvious popular knowledge that you're trying to figure out a way to either take credit for and or learn from. They're not all bad. A lot of cliches are actually good. In education, it's not necessarily cliches that are kind of impeding progress. It's this training we all have to second guess what the teacher wants to hear, right? In other words, when there's a challenge posed to you in a class, you're not really thinking about what the right answer is, or questioning the question, or thinking deeply, challenging the teacher. You're not in a position where you're afraid to raise your hand and say something stupid. You're more putting your energy into trying to figure out what will sound smart and what the teacher will think is smart, so that it's the right answer, so you'll get a good grade so you can move on. And that's sort of how we move on through life, second guessing to get to the next thing. That's what I think impedes progress. It's the fear of making mistakes and the fear of having the courage of our convictions to say what we think. And as Ralph Waldo Emerson would say in Self-Reliance, brilliant essay, we tend to borrow everyone else's ideas and make them our own because it's easier. And that's what, and I'm not sure that's really, that doesn't advance us as individuals. I mean, that would be the best answer I can come up with.
Thank you. Okay, this one's from Kelly. How do we teach people to think critically and teach them to use AI augmentation?
To think critically is just to ask questions. Okay. My pet peeve right now are all the very wealthy people who are scaring everybody about AI. Okay. If any of you follow me on LinkedIn, you know I'm a maniac about that. It just pisses me off, quite frankly, because I know it's bullshit. Okay. It's bullshit. And somebody, a CEO of a company, will say something, tweet something, say something, and everybody on the internet repeats it. Most of the time because people are making money doing it. And or they're on the influencer payroll. That's a $100 billion industry. They got a lot of juice. You can talk a lot of bullshit with 100 billion. And if you just stop and you ask yourself, like, why would they say that? Like, why would they say that? And you, like, what is their agenda? And think about it. What is in it for them? What information is there out there? So, for example, we're being told there's lots of, we're being told that AI is replacing people, right? We're being told that we're all losing our jobs because of AI, right? We're all being told that people are, like, hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs now because of AI. We're being told the reason why it's really hard to find work is because of AI. But not, that isn't true. You can, if you ask questions and look for data and Google data, even use the AI to find data to challenge it. GPT will challenge OpenAI. You'll find studies out there, like the University of Chicago published a study about 6 months ago that established that there's no net job losses in America because of Gen AI, none, zero. Goose egg. What there are a lot of layoffs because we're in a cyclical contraction. The economy goes up and down. Microsoft lets 7,000 to about 10,000 people go every 10 to 12 years. They've been doing it forever. It just so happens now they're doing it with a Gen AI paint job. So you have to just ask questions. You have to stop. You have to breathe. Try to get out of the stampede. Think for yourself. And Google, go to GPT. And this is the answer to the second question. You can use these AIs actually as a gym for your mind as much as you can use them as a wheelchair. So you can go to GPT and say, GPT, I have a press release I need to write. I've got a strategic plan I need to write. I have an email I need to write. I want to apply to this job. Here's the information. Do it for me. And you'll get shit. You'll get an average thing that will look good to you, but it's regressing to the mean because a lot of other people are doing the same thing with the same database, the same tool, the same tech. Or you can say, tell me more about this. Let's say it's a job. Tell me more about this industry. I want to learn more. What's really working in this industry? GPT, why is that really working? What information do you have to support that? What data what resources can you give me? I want to read them myself. And you can use it as a thinking partner. Or you can use our AI. Our AI will ask you questions and challenge you, make you smarter. So I use 5 Gen AI. I use 5 Gen AIs every day. I love AI. A lot of people think I'm anti-AI because of my criticism of the industry on LinkedIn, but that's not the case. I love the technology. I just don't love the people, the way they're positioning it to monetize it and capitalize it based on fear. I don't like that. And that will go away. That will end. I use 5 AIs daily, including our own. And then I use Grok. I love Gemini. I use GPT. And Claude. But I don't use them. They don't do any of my work for me. They do not do my writing for me. I use them to, for example, I use them to find information. So for example, I want to learn about AGI. Sam Altman just said something about AGI. Sam Altman just said something about this. What data is there to support it? And GPT will give me some sources. And almost always there'll be wrong sources. Okay, they make mistakes. That's the other thing. Like they can't replace people because you can't trust them. They're always wrong. Not always, 30 to 70%. So then I'll take the answers and I'll put it to Grok. I'll triangulate, and I'll put one set into the other, and they'll often correct each other. And that's how I'll learn, and I'll find out that there's actually a lot of evidence to suggest that that is not true. What was just said, it's not true. But then I'll see everybody on the internet repeating it as if it is true. It's hard to stop that tsunami of bullshit. But you can use the AI to figure that out, to find that out. All you have to do is ask questions and not believe everything you're told. Just because somebody's got a lot of money doesn't make them smarter than you. It really doesn't. I mean, there's a certain skill to making money, but a lot of it's luck, a lot of it's privilege, a lot of it's who they know, right? A lot of it's who they know. So that doesn't make them smarter than you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that wraps up all the questions, but does anyone want to ask Stephen anything? You can come off camera, go
Email me. You all have my email. DM me. I'm great. We on behalf of Curiouser.ai, all of us, we're truly grateful that you've joined us. Your time is valuable. Hopefully you take something out of this that's helpful and constructive. I don't think there was any bullshit in what we shared with you, or snake oil, or secret hacks, or magic buttons, or get rich quick schemes. So hopefully you found this of value. And anyway, we're grateful that you were here. I guess does that conclude today's performance?
I think so. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be sending the recording out shortly.
Thank you,
Cheers,
Stephen.
people.
Thank
you so much, Stephen. Thank
God
you,
bless.
everybody.
Bye. All.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Take care.